This is a presentation that tells you a little bit about some research that we were doing at the Health Services Research Centre at Victoria University over the last year to 15 or so months. That was the Ministry of Health directed, funded, HRC funded as well. I'm just going to run through a little bit of briefly about how we approach the research based on what the Ministry wanted to find out, and then touch on some of our key findings. How do I make it move on? There. Sweet. Okay, so the purpose of the research lies primarily in the work of the Ministry concerned with improving sexual and reproductive health for Rangatahi Maori. And it falls out of money that was earmarked in 2011 over 4 years to provide effective and appropriate services to improve sexual and reproductive health, particularly for high priority groups like Rangatahi Maori. So the reprioritised funding was in response to the things that I'm sure you know about the alarming statistics reported, including the high rates of STIs, particularly chlamydia, reported low rates of consistent contraception use, etc., by rangatahi. And so this research was commissioned to kind of investigate that situation further. Was specifically interested in assisting Whānau in identifying the skills that Whānau need in order to kōrero with Rangatahi Maori about sexual and reproductive health, so that they can support Rangatahi Maori to have healthy sexual and reproductive lives and relationships. And underlying that intent is the Whānau water aspiration that's referred to in the middle there of, to do awesome Māori whānau. So the research aimed to explore more fully with Whānau issues of STIs, unsupported and unattended pregnancies amongst Rangatahi Māori, contraception and condom use by Rangatahi Māori, and service provision for Rangatahi Māori. Specifically, it aimed to explore and identify those things that Whānau believe will facilitate a reduction in STIs and unplanned and unattended and unsupported pregnancies, increase consistent contraception and condom use, facilitate the provision of appropriate and accessible sexual and reproductive health services, and contribute to a supportive context with Whānau to discuss sexual and reproductive health. So in order to explore those a little bit further, we kind of looked at a whole range of things, including traditional contemporary understandings of Māori sexual and reproductive health, sexual attraction, attitudes towards contraception use, etc., and experience and responses to sexual abuse. We ran this research in a kind of a three-phased way. We were very clear that our methods, that this was qualitative research, and that it was underpinned by a körero Māori approach, and that we were uncovering from participants, what we were uncovering from participants was balanced against the LIP review that looked at international Indigenous data as well. So we had some very clear goals, what I've already referred to, supporting Whānau to identify the skills that they need to talk with their rangatahi about sexual and reproductive health, genuinely listening to the voices of Māori, and representing their views, and ultimately contributing to Māori knowledge and development. So we sat down and we talked and we heard and we planned. It seems kind of quite a straightforward topic, but so it wasn't. There were a whole lot of little things that needed quite a lot of ironing out, even the definition of who are rangatahi. A whole lot of things around ethical approval, of course, and our access to some of the rangatahi in particular that we were keen to speak with. We established from the beginning two advisory groups, a farmer advisory group and a youth advisory group, and they were fundamental in the direction of the research and a whole lot of things, and determining what kind of information we should be actually looking for in the first place, who we should be going to, and where we should find people, etc. So, run through that very fast because I want to get on to other stuff. So, just to reiterate, what we were wanting to do, what we were wanting to find out was, we wanted to get Rangatahi and Whānau together to korero about two main issues actually. We were really interested in relationships. We didn't just want to find out what Whānau thought they needed to support Rangatahi to talk about sex. We really wanted to focus on finding that out in order for Rangatahi to have healthy sexual lives and relationships, and an important component of that is role modelling. There were two particular groups that we tried to target, Rangatahi Tākāpui and Rangatahi with disability, and that second group, although it was not ministry directed, was because they're identified often in the literature as a group with specific needs and yet quite often overlooked. Okay, so again, these were the kind of things that we were looking at. And this is how it was explained. It was basically about being heard, Whānau and Rangatahi being heard by each other and being heard by government, or their, their knowledge, their information being heard in that way. This created a bit of a dilemma for us actually, because the whole research is actually based on the premise that improvements in Rangatahi sexual and reproductive health can be made through Whānau support. But what if Rangatahi turned around and told us that they didn't actually want Whānau support? So how are we going to frame the research then? And it turns out that's exactly what they told us, within certain contexts. So, but I'll come back to that a little bit further on. So these were the, before I get into findings, these were the people that we spoke to. It's not a huge group of people, huge numbers of people. Huge input from those numbers of people though. And there were, I alluded to this last year, there were gaps in, I believe, in who we didn't speak to. We did not have a strong lesbian Rangatahi voice, and we didn't have a strong queer voice either. Seems like the boys have a lot to say. We also would have been, I think it would have helped the research a lot to have a bit more pākehā input into this. Initially we started this research very clearly not wanting to talk pākehā, because this was about Māori understandings and perspectives, but it became apparent a little bit further down the line that pākehā voice was also important, because Māori don't just have relationships with Māori, and Māori do not just have Māori parents, so those are just some little asides. Alright, what I want to do now is just talk to a number of, talk to each of these questions that we wrote up as outcomes. What skills do Whānau need in order to korero with Rangatahi Māori about sexual and reproductive health? How do Whānau support and include Rangatahi Māori who identify as tāpū in sexual and reproductive health? How do Whānau facilitate a reduction in STIs amongst Rangatahi Māori? How do Whānau facilitate a reduction in unintended, unwanted or unsupported pregnancies? How do they increase consistent contraception and condom use? And how do they facilitate provision of appropriate and accessible services for Rangatahi Māori? First of all, what skills do Whānau need in order to korero Rangatahi Māori about sexual and reproductive health? What's interesting, as I said before, older Whānau members tend not to question the role they have in supporting Rangatahi Māori to have healthy sex lives and relationships, or the importance of their role. But actually, parents are not the first port of call. Parents are not the first port of call for Rangatahi Māori when it comes to advice and support around sex, around health services and around relationships. Siblings kind of tune to, but Rangatahi clearly indicated that their preference was for that kind of advice and support to come from peer groups. So kaupapa whānau, friends are a much safer and comfortable source of learning about sex and reproductive health, largely because of their time similar experiences. So, a significant skill required by Whānau in order to korero with Rangatahi then about sexual sexual and reproductive health is really understanding that they're likely not the preferred source of support. The research confirmed that the foundation of whānau support for Rangatahi Maori, sexual and reproductive health, is relationships. If it's not biological whānau, then it's with others who fulfil the same reciprocal role of support. Traditionally, it was suggested that traditionally happy relationships formed between rangatahi that were connected by whakapapa, as in, cousins and that those kinds of relationships were now comparable with the types of relationships rangatahi would have with their peer groups, and that's a little bit to do with, they still have the same qualities of mateship, companionship, common bonds and goals, and it's a little bit to do with the difference in society now and the access to, access or proximity to those cousins that would once filled that role. So it is a dilemma, I think, for in some Māori circles to be talking about support, whānau support, not in the true sense of whānau support. I'm not talking about whānau, but it has the same outcomes. And the preference for peer support around healthy sexualised relationships didn't detract from the comfort that rangatahi find in lifelong relationships with whānau. It just infers that their dependence on whānau doesn't equate with their comfort in discussing sex with them, basically. The main other point around whānau relationships made in the research was that in order for Rangatahi Maori to be able to make healthy decisions and choices about their sex lives and relationships, there needs to be a shift in power. So whānau need to enable this, and they need courage to do that. Whānau have to have the courage not to hinder the choices that rangatahi make. I know how hard that is. Supporting rangatahi Māori in learning and naturalising healthy decision making is therefore important. That was one I just spoke to. The most important thing that came out of this whole research was about communication. The most important skill required by whānau in order to korero with their rangatahi or with rangatahi about sexual and reproductive health is communication. The simple ability to converse cannot be underestimated. Open communication between whānau and rangatahi begins with dialogue, but it ends with trust. Conversations about sexual acts and sexual relationships with rangatahi Māori need to bypass awkwardness and discomfort and focus on being realistic and non-judgmental. And that might sound like I'm contradicting what I just said earlier, and that rangatahi don't want to listen to parents in particular, but they are just one component of a wider whānau. Talking about the mauri mana and tapu of sex has to be in a calm and comfortable environment, and we whānau accept the sexual experience of rangatahi. As I said, it's not necessary for parents to be the conversants, but whānau do have a responsibility to ensure someone is. Okay, skip. Okay. This was a huge thing. Rangatahi live in a world where they never known any different. They've been born into, Rangatahi born after the Whānau, 80s or something, have been born into a world where ready access to electronic communications, to everything, they've never known any different. It is a world that they have not had to adapt to, it is a world that we've had to adapt to. That means that in communication with rangatahi, whānau need to learn about the world that rangatahi is in. I made a comment down there that changes are no longer generational. The world of a 17 or 18-year-old now is distance from that of a 15 or 16-year-old. Once upon a time there were generational differences between grandparents and parents and children and moko, but now there are the gap of those differences is much smaller, if you understand what I'm saying, and that's because of the world that rangatahi live in. So, you know, whānau are to be a support in the world of rangatahi sexual and reproductive health. Man, so really get to grips with that. Takatapui, probably I can't tell you anything more than you already know. Many rangatahi spoke about still the discrimination felt from whānau. The main thing that was said about takatapui tanga is that for whānau to be able to embrace rangatahi takatapui, many whānau acknowledged the lack of information and not knowing where to go to. They acknowledged that there needed to be different types of information shared and understood, but they didn't know where to go to. And the very clear voice from rangatahi takatapui was from the rest of our whānau takatapui. So the inclusion of the movement of whānau to accept takatapui tanga and to accept takatapui within whānau was very important. Yeah, I'm sure you fellows already know this. STIs. STIs was an interesting one because basically whānau don't talk about it, and they don't talk about it because they don't know about it, and so so it was the least, despite being discussed within the groups, it was at least knowing about what to do about it. There were some suggestions like creating a condom culture, but the same as the tobacco culture or smoking culture thing, so that it was out there all the time and people understood and it could be spoken about very freely. Within whānau, oh man, sorry, I just completely overrode the time thing. Interesting thing about rangatahi, young rangatahi, teen pregnancy and that kind of thing was completely acceptable for rangatahi Māori, which we know, so there's a lot of contradiction in what policy and I don't know what rangatahi are being told. They very clearly take huge risks. They don't see lack of condom use. Rangatahi Māori don't use condoms and contraception because they have different attitudes towards risk, and partly in terms of pregnancy, that's about the kind of total acceptance that babies are all good, and also what is seen within whānau of rangatahi becoming good parents and therefore being a positive thing. They're confident that they won't be isolated, even though it does happen. So no. And very quickly, the sexual health services, the information around what we need in sexual health services, again, the focus was quite strongly on the need to change the way we are promoting sexual and reproductive health to be in line with the world that I'm taking live in, which is kind of not knocking on the door and going and meeting someone. It has to be in that wider social media now. There is so much more, and when the report is finally released, you can get to see it.